Alright folks, another earthquake update here as multiple swarms have been reported in the western United States and, well, northwestern United States, including in Northern California near Donner Lake, also west of Reno, Nevada, and seismic activity continues at Yellowstone National Park as they've upped the number of quakes there to almost 900 just in the past 2 weeks. And a significant swarm was also recorded off the northern coast of Iceland that we're going to look at. Not to mention, there were also other strong tremblers that were recorded in Halmahera, Indonesia, and back-to-back strong quakes struck the Fiji Islands as the earthquakes in diverse places continue around the globe here, folks. So this first piece here is from KTVN News, a local news outlet there in California, I suppose. And it says the United States Geological Survey has reported that more than 24 earthquakes have rattled the Lake Tahoe region early Tuesday, so earlier today. The largest earthquake that apparently was measured was 3.9 shortly after 2 a.m. at a very shallow depth. It says here in the report of just 11 miles. And it goes on to mention how preliminary earthquake information showed at the time of this report that at least 28 minor aftershocks occurred in the area, ranging in magnitude from 0.6 all the way up to 3.2, following the 3.9 magnitude earthquake. Now, after that report was released in Northern California, there were reports of multiple extremely shallow magnitude 4 earthquakes, and I'll pull that up here on the European Mediterranean Seismological Center. And so here's the first one, just extremely shallow here, folks, just 7 kilometers deep, and here you see a magnitude 4 there in Northern California. Meanwhile, just a few hours later, another extremely shallow, as you see here, just 8 kilometers deep, a magnitude 4.1 this time in Northern California. So after the swarms there, more than 24, over 28 quakes there. Then you've got the magnitude 3.9 that was reported, and then followed by basically back-to-back shallow magnitude 4 earthquakes. So I'll link you guys up to that. But perhaps the one 4.0 quake is the 3.9 quake that was reported by USGS. But these were reported after this report came out. So that's why I'm assuming here at this point in time that this is a separate quake. However, nonetheless, you've got, 28 plus earthquakes in the swarm there in the Lake Tahoe region near Donner Lake in Northern California. And so also there in the basically in the western United States, there was also a seismic swarm that was reported west of Reno, Nevada earlier today. And this is the piece from Tembler.net talking about this, and it says it just past 2 a.m. local time, a minor seismic swarm began just west of Reno, Nevada. The swarm kicked off with a magnitude 3.7 earthquake and has been followed by 18 more earthquakes, including another magnitude 3.9 that garnered nearly 500 felt reports on the USGS website. While none of these quakes have been large enough to cause any serious damage, folks, as only light shaking was reported here according to the piece. Reports did come in from Carson City and even Sacramento, 130 kilometers away from the epicenter of this quake swarm. And as swarms can precede larger events, they go on to mention, and because a large earthquake could do significant damage to the area, we thought we'd take a closer look at this part of eastern California and western Nevada. And so in this piece, they do that, and they basically go on to talk about how that particular part of the western United States, in between the Sierra Nevada microplate and the Basin and Range province, is what is known as Walker Lane. And they go on to say that this shear zone together with the San Andreas Fault accommodates the majority of plate motion between the Pacific and North American plates. And Walker Lane is predominantly made up of discontinuous sets of right lateral strike-slip faults. And in the area around this morning's swarm, there are several mapped faults, including the Polaris Fault and the East Truckee Fault Zone. While these are known right lateral faults, consistent with the predominant motion in the area, the sense of slip on today's earthquakes is ambiguous, the report goes on to say. Now, one of the reasons why this is the case is because due to the small magnitudes, the quakes may have occurred on smaller antithetic faults rather than structures associated with the large northwest-southeast trending right lateral faults. So a bit of a scientific explanation here, but it goes on to say that despite the fact that these small earthquakes do not pose a risk to residents in the area, their location allows us to highlight the larger faults, which are capable of magnitude 6.5 or greater earthquakes. This includes not only the Polaris Fault, which runs through the town of Truckee, but the faults that bound Lake Tahoe and the Carson City Fault. If such an earthquake were to occur on any of these faults, the consequences would be severe, the report says. While this may seem like an unlikely event, such a quake is not out of the question. Based on the Global Earthquake Activity Rate model, or GEAR, which is available in Temblor, a magnitude 6+ quake is likely in our lifetime in this particular region. And this model uses global strain rates and seismicity since 1977 to forecast the likely earthquake magnitude in our lifetime anywhere on Earth. And they provide a diagram of this. But folks, they go on to talk more about the dangers of the region, and you know, it's been widely reported. I've done many videos where experts have come out and been warning about many areas along the West Coast, and many different reports from geologists, seismologists, and scientists coming out and showing how all these fault systems there along the West Coast are interconnected one way or another, and a big enough event in the right spot could send energy through the entire system, potentially, or if there were multiple quakes that had occurred due to, you know, perhaps large tectonic movement. Again, however it happens, folks, we're looking at signs of the times here, earthquakes in diverse places. But that wasn't the only place in the United States where swarms are going on. As I've been reporting on in multiple videos, Yellowstone supervolcano at Yellowstone National Park there in the states of Wyoming and Montana has been very, very, very active seismically as well recently. And so here's a piece that also came out earlier today regarding the seismicity that's been going on over there. And as you see here in the headline, now the number of earthquakes that occurred in the swarm in just the past 2 weeks has risen up to 878. And this is still ongoing here, folks. Now, of course, you know, they're saying there's no danger of an eruption or anything like that. The fact of the matter is there has been larger swarms than this in times past. But again, when they do happen, they are still unusual and are still potential indicators of larger geological events that could take place. And as these scientists will always say, no one can say for certain, but they are saying now that there is no danger of an eruption. They haven't raised the alerts on the volcano or anything like that. But it's worth watching here. And it goes on to say how over 878 earthquakes have now been recorded there at the Yellowstone supervolcano over the last 2 weeks, with the ongoing swarm taking place on the western edge of the national park. And the current earthquake swarm, actually, if you remember, folks, in the first video we did back when this first started, it began on June 12th. A week later, the USGS put out a statement to say that 464 earthquakes had been recorded, And, of course, they said at the time the largest was a magnitude 4.4, and this was the highest number of earthquakes at Yellowstone within a single week in the past 5 years. Well, at the time, a spokesman for the USGS told Newsweek activity appeared to be slowly winding down, if you remember, and adding that no other geological activity has been detected. However, they kept after that they kept upping the numbers, right? We had seen it go from 474 to 500 plus, and then the latest one was 778 or something like that plus, and now we're seeing 878 plus. So who knows how long this will go, but you know, there has been swarms in the past that have lasted, I believe, up to a month. So I mean, certainly this could drag on for some time potentially, but it still is, like I said, highly unusual when these types of swarms do occur, and they are worth monitoring. And as a matter of fact, that's what it talks about, how the University of Utah, that, as I mentioned in previous videos, is part of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, and they basically provide long-term monitoring of the earthquake and volcanic activity in and around Yellowstone National Park. And in the piece here, it quotes Jamie Farrell, who's a research professor at the university, and he said, as of June 26th, as of yesterday, there had been 878 events that had been recorded as part of the ongoing swarm there, and did highlight the fact that it is still ongoing. And so we had swarms, you know, in northern California there in the Lake Tahoe region near Donner Lake, and we had seismic swarms there in Reno, Nevada. Here at Yellowstone, it continues the ongoing swarm of seismicity. But there was also an earthquake swarm, a series of over 40 earthquakes that were recorded north of Iceland, as we see in this piece here from the Iceland Monitor. And it says there has been a series of earthquakes 230 kilometers north of Iceland since last night. There have been over 40 small tremors and 2 earthquakes that were measured, over 4 on the Richter scale. In a quote here from Einar Hofferson from the Iceland Met Office, he said there are no signs of an eruption at the volcano in the area, but the series of earthquakes seem to be connected with the tectonic plates of the region, according to his report, and the earthquakes originate on the borders of the American and the Eurasian tectonic plates. And so where these earthquakes originated is located where these two tectonic plates meet. And, you know, they mentioned that a series of earthquakes aren't necessarily unusual in that region, though they were many this time, and some of them large, all at the same time, he went on to say, which is very unusual for the region. So there you have it, a series of over 40 earthquakes hits off the northern coast of Iceland. And, you know, a couple that were measured over magnitude 4 on the Richter scale at shallow depths. And as I said, there were other strong earthquakes that struck a couple other regions around the globe here. And as I had mentioned in the beginning of the video, we had back-to-back strong quakes striking the south of the Fiji Islands, as we see here in this first piece from the European Mediterranean Seismological Center that's reporting on a magnitude 5.3. And then, just under an hour later, there was a magnitude 5.8 in the same region. So you have back-to-back 5.3 and then a 5.8 quake respectively there south of the Fiji Islands. And there was a magnitude 5 quake also reported in the Halmahera region of Indonesia. And so I'll link you up to that report as well, my friends. as we see the earthquakes in diverse places continuing around the globe here, as more signs of the times. The links are in the description box below, my friends. I pray you're right with the Lord, that you've repented of your sins, and that you've turned to Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior of your life today. Until next time, folks, this is Brother Joey signing off. Much love, my friends, and God bless you guys. All right, folks, another earthquake update here, as multiple swarms have been reported in the western United States and, well, northwestern United States, including in Northern California near Donner Lake, also west of Reno, Nevada, and seismic activity continues at Yellowstone National Park as they've upped the number of quakes there to almost 900 just in the past 2 weeks. And a significant swarm was also recorded off the northern coast of Iceland that we're going to look at. First piece here is from KTVN News, a local news outlet there in California, I suppose. And it says the United States Geological Survey has reported that more than 24 earthquakes have rattled the Lake Tahoe region. And not to mention, there were also other strong tremblers that were recorded in Halmahera, Indonesia, and back-to-back strong quakes struck the Fiji Islands as the earthquakes in diverse places continue around the globe here, folks. So this early Tuesday, so earlier today, the largest earthquake that apparently was measured was 3.9 shortly after 2 a.m. at a very shallow depth, it says here in the report, of just 11 miles. And